Water changes everything. Even a small wetland can completely reshape an ecosystem. Welcome to another episode of Pandora through a biologist's eyes. For this episode, I thought it might be nice to take a look at something that a lot of people might overlook, and that is we're going over this way towards the Weary Swamp. So this area by itself isn't its own biome, but I like the way it looked because I just ran through it on one of my other videos. Because in my opinion, this area is a very unique spot, because so far I've been through a bunch of other wetland areas, such as the Delta, if you've maybe seen it. And it's interesting because this spot isn't its own biome, but it definitely has its own name. We do have a biome, the shallow bog biome down there, which is called out as a different biome, but this area we're going to isn't. What's interesting about earlier when I went to this, I heard an animal that sounded a lot like a cuckoo. So now already in the wetlands. So first thing we notice, it is open. There's very few trees growing here, so it's kind of like a natural clearing because of the water. Because as you might have known, some trees cannot grow in water because it kind of like rots the roots, or they just kind of like can't grab onto it. Wetlands are usually very great for small types of, or a variety of grasses. It could be like from small to large. The thing about wetlands, so there are different wetlands, and they have different soil richness or lack thereof. So usually we have those more bog, moor. So English is not my native language, and I know they differ a lot in English between those varieties. What's a bog, what's a swamp, or I think moor. But we don't really do that too much in German. But we have those very, nutrient poor areas, which a lot of the wetlands are, which is the reason why lots of coniferous plants have developed in these areas. As far as I'm aware, in the clouded forest there isn't any type of coniferous plant. We've seen them in the deltas. But we have those grasses and moss-like structures, moss-like plants. And here we hear the cuckoo again. And clouded forest is kind of like occupied by those different tree-sized mushrooms, and they also seem to be growing with a more smaller shape in this bog as well. So we have those very nice coral-looking type of fungus, and those mudstack ones. Now we also have some animals aside those little flies that we have, or those bee-like animals that we've seen. And we also have lots of flies and smaller insects in this area. But we also have some larger herbivores. So these animals are bone-helm rhino. They're medium-sized, I guess comparable to... they're more defensive than the bladeheads or sternbeards that we've seen. So they're definitely in between, I'd say, a stern beast or bladehead and a hammerhead, because they tend to be kind of like aggressive when you annoy them. What's interesting, we have those different color variations. So we have this yellow one. Oh, we have a murdeer going over there. So open water spaces are usually a hub for life. I think I've said it a couple of times already. If you're looking for wildlife, go to water and just wait there. At some point it will show up. But we have those different variations with a normal bone helm. We have this very special one, a mature one. And then we have the young one. So in this game, they of course have that for the animals, that they have different, rarity levels, so you can make equipment out of them. I think I saw a feral over there. They're really annoying in the last couple of videos. I had to cut out so much stuff. Well, anyways, I like that they have, use a little ecological and, thing that makes biological sense, that different age groups would have different coloring, because a lot of animals have that. For example, if we look at deer, you have a large male deer, which has a nice rack. I recently learned that it's a term that you call, apparently, when a deer has nice antlers, you call it a nice rack, or a great rack even. I've made so many jokes about that with a friend of mine. Well, anyways, so we have those different maturity groups, which would also, have a genetic factor that they mature earlier and get those nice colorings going on. There could even be some sexual dimorphism. The game doesn't really go into that too much, but it could very well be explained that you have this, an animal with a larger crest, those, bone-like structures, nicer colorings, has like a better chance with potential mating partners. I do like their faces. They have those very kind of like basilisk, chicken-like looking faces. They're very bulky, and they have very good defense too, so they kind of like ram you with that. They also have the neural cues, but they're kind of small. And what's also interesting about them, they do have this shaggy fur down there, or fur-like structure. I really like that the game shows you a little bit of idle behavior of the animals. Well, let's keep going, maybe we'll find that murderer. All those little white spots that you saw, this is the game's indication that there are fish in there. So kind of like a fishing spot. So you're supposed to kind of like shoot your arrow in there and get it. See if we can see them. So the water is very shallow. And the fish just disappeared. There are some fish there, but those are those kind of smallish. Really nice looking though. There's the feral venator over there. So ferals are its own thing in this game, and they definitely deserve their own video. They're basically kind of like, tortured animals that have been set free by the RDA, aka the humans, and they're kind of like terrorizing Pandora now, and they are a real pain when I try to film my videos, because they come out of nowhere and they just slaughter my specimens. Oh, there they are. So that's the other type of feral we have there, the feral biologist. And there's a feral venator. One video without any one of them showing up would be great. Okay, I know that wasn't... And now they're mad at me because I was trying to help them. Well, I can show you a little bit of their behavior then, I guess. So they kind of like charge at you, similar to how the hammerhead does it. And I like that little thing that they do, kind of like, trying to kind of like, get you to back away. So they do this aggressive stance, they roar at you, lift their head. They do a little motion with their feet, which is definitely inspired by some of the animals. Oh, great. Okay, I'm gonna ignore you. I like that they just missed that. But I did see a murdy over there. I'll try to get that one to leave me alone. Well, what we can see here, this area is very rocky. So that doesn't mean there's lots of, humus built up, so we don't have good soil here, I guess, because it's more or less the bedrock. Having those trees around seem to indicate that at some point they're like, when it's like hard rain coming, they might kind of like sweep them away. I also have lots of fungus around. We have more ferals over there, and I'm still being chased by that one Stonehelm rhino. And there's more ferals. Great. I'm trying to help, and I'm still being attacked by the Bonehelm rhino. So there is something you might not have noticed when you look at those ferals. We have these animals in the clouded forest. I guess I can show you if I kill that one. So their head is armored, so doing that doesn't really do much. But they do have weak spots, and I can use my Navi senses, which is of course their side, kind of like the throat, the jugular. I like how it just has the arrow sticking out of its head. And there's another feral. I usually try to cut out a lot of the gameplay, but the ferals have been so annoying recently. I always have to cut out like minutes and minutes of them just showing up, and there's more over there. A lot more over there. What are they chasing? I'm gonna kill that one real quick. Oh, it's a murder. Never mind. So taking them down with a clean kill when they're coming straight at you is kind of hard to do. Okay, so you see those things floating around? Those are shrouds. So what they do, they kind of like land, and they also ruin it. So you can't kind of like get the materials anymore, but they just land and then they make those shrouds, those leaf-like structures. That's a pretty neat detail, but now we come to the same problem that I have with a lot of other stuff if we look at the Hunter's Guide. So it says it's a parasitic swarm. Is it really parasitic if it goes on dead prey? Because that would mean they're kind of like, scavengers. Because parasitic kind of means in general one has an advantage, one has a disadvantage. The prey is already dead. I mean, of course, a predator, me in this case, I cannot get the materials from the animal that I just killed. So I would have a disadvantage, yes. But the lifestyle of itself, it's more like an opportunistic scavenger. So it just lands and it kind of like, as you've seen, it starts off kind of small, like this weird little beetle-looking thing. And then it lands rapidly, and it just spreads those shrouds that start looking like leaves. And if we look at the Hunter's Guide, it says they do that to, any scavenging attempt by other creatures, but they then also die and ensure the next generation is alive. So kind of like a lot of animals do. I think it says even up here, mayflies. Because a lot of animals, they have a very short lifetime, so what they do is, they mature, they have a very short period where they try to spawn, then they usually lay the eggs or generally reproduce, and then tend to die. Salmon, for example, would be a good example, and of course a lot of animals such as, yes, mayflies, although they just don't live a day, just the animal that we see flying around lives very short-lived. But they usually spend a lot of time in, I think for mayflies it's in the water, or as larvae in the ground, or like when it comes to animals such as those cicadas that roam every, I think, 13 to 17 years. So they have a very short life when they're in their adult flying form, but they can spend a lot of time as a nymph in the ground. So here we see the problem again with the ferals, so they've killed a bunch of those bone helms and they're just like all over the place. I mean, it's good for those shrouds, it's bad for the bone helm. Now we're in an area, it's a little less rocky here, so we have more of those greens in between. And those more fluffy looking grounds with those, I think they're more like between like grass and moss, it's hard to see with the textures. I'm still looking for that murder though. Got scared off by the ferals. But here in the distance we can see where this little swampy area, the wetland ends. We have the forest, which is a mix out of those coniferous trees and those mushroom-like structures. But considering we have those mushroom here and they're smaller, all those mudstack funguses, and then they're smaller than those frill stem tree, which is kind of like a fungus-looking thing as well. It would also, I hear the footsteps. Oh, there it is. Pinpoint that it's harder to have like a larger tree being sustained by the nutrients in this wetland area. So we have a murdeer. So they're kind of like the small, nimble version of the herbivores for the clouded forest. And they have this interesting kind of like woodpecker behavior by just like dipping their head like this. Kind of like with their their snout or rostrum. Very nice and colorful, and then they can lift their tail, which is probably also for communication. I've seen them in little groups, but I've also seen them solitary. So it says they're a distant cousin of the hexapede, and uniquely able to navigating slopes, large roots and vines. Deploys like a sail when they're digging into the ground. I wouldn't call that digging, they're kind of like hammering their head into that. It says, yeah. Mushrooms, roots, truffles and worms, so it seems to be omnivore. It's interesting though, because they have this very small snout, so I guess they peck it and then try to grab it. And apparently they're nervous, quick to flee. I like how it says this. It's unlikely to be observed by a novice hunter, because they're very skittish. And then I'm just doing this. I'm literally right up in its face, and it's not bothered by me. But I do have this perk, which allows me to kind of like, as long as the weapon's not drawn, the animals are kind of chill. Which is great for observing them, although I have noticed if you get too close, especially the usually somewhat aggressive ones, they will kind of like stop their idle behavior. But it's really neat to see it. It's mildly concerning that you hear it so loud, and as we noticed earlier with the spot, it's kind of like, bedrock here, so it's kind of like shoving its head into that. That's a really big rock here. Oh, I think it's a big rock. So it might not be the best tactic to look for food. See, now it's running off. We do have more of these insects here as well. I like that the clouded forest is really full when it comes to different types of flyers, like different insects, and great people. So the way that looks, I think it has been dug by humans. Yeah, almost definitely doesn't look natural. It's also way deeper. So yeah, we also have habitat destruction on Pandora. And here we have a feral again. But we saw it with that plant here, when the feral walked past, it kind of like closed up. That's a defense mechanism for this one plant. So when you walk up, it kind of like closes. Slowly, but it does close. And I hit that tree. So one thing I've noticed, the shrouds do not attack, or, go after this one. It is a little bit of an oversight in my opinion, because for something that's just, eating it, it shouldn't really care about it being like, tortured by humans. So as you've seen, or may have noticed already, plant life is very interactive on Pandora. And here we have a mare deer shoving its head into a rock again. The ferals. I don't know why, but the areas that I like to go for my videos, they're always occupied by ferals. And I don't know, since that update it seems worse. Like there was an update a couple weeks ago now, I think, maybe months. And it's really annoying. Yeah, sadly a lot of the, plants, they don't even have a name. I wanted to see maybe if those nice, kind of like coral fungus looking. I mean, they are fungus, but they're like coral looking fungus, I should say. Very interesting. So those murder, they make really cute sounds. And now he's just shoving his head into the ground again. Right. Well, at least there is a second one. So the clouded forest is generally very foggy. which I think it got the name from. There's like, the clouds in the area. But over wetlands, due to, the water evaporating and having different thermal regulation compared to a forest or open grassland, water, fog or mist tends to stay in the area and kind of like, congregating over the cooler water, and especially the mornings, which is like very nice looking. And that gives kind of like, forests, bogs and swamps, kind of like, this misty, eerie feeling. You can get lost in. Because a lot of folklore has kind of like moors and bogs and swamps. Just, mystically otherworldly space. I personally like it though. It's really nice. You can see a lot of stuff in the fog. Yeah, I'm definitely losing my patience with all of those ferals around. But I do like this spot, even though it's not like its own classified ecosystem. It's very nice looking. And there's another feral. What's up with those today? Well, I hope you liked that video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I get annoyed a bit by the ferals, but I do try to show you as much as I can from the, different spaces and habitats that we have in this game. And of course, a lot of the inspirations from this game have been directly taken from, real-world Earth locations. A lot of the animals are inspired by real-life animals. And then we have locations such as bogs and swamps, which are very unique habitats, and they're very, very sensitive to destruction, climate change, and generally changes in its surrounding habitat. So having like, a field or something that's being fertilized can have like lots of effects on an habitat that is, used to having poor nutrients. It can affect the whole ecosystem, and very unique plants and animals, or even microorganisms, they can just disappear real quick, even though it's, it doesn't seem to be that bad on a large scale, but they're very, very unique habitats. And it's, it's what I always say, like, your wetlands, they need protection, and they don't need to be ignored just because they're not as spectacular. And as someone like me that's from Europe, we had a lot of those moors and little bog areas that are kind of like got dried up, and they're such unique habitats. And they have been leveled to make, create space for fields. So I really like this spot. I hope you liked that video. I hope you appreciate the bogs just as I do and wetlands. And with that, I wish you a nice day, and bye!